Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Flock Talk. I'm Robin Sullivan of the Leather Elves. As always, we've got the usual reminders. Please like the Leather Elves on Facebook. That way, you get notification when we go live. You can check our Facebook page for surprise sales, pop up events, things that we're doing. You can also follow the Leather Elves on Instagram, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, a lot going on, a lot of information this week. I want to ask you to please don't forget to support your favorite Rockstar Tour rescue. You can support any of the rescues on the tour. And if you would like to support a rescue that's not on the tour this year, you can click other and put their information in there. I just want to clarify how the Rockstar Tour works because apparently there's some confusion out there. None of the rescues have to pay anything to be part of it. They were chosen geographically pretty much, or if anybody reached out to us, we put them on the list. And doesn't matter how small or large they are, or everybody's got something to offer. So we challenged each rescue to get $500 worth of toys donated. And if they don't, that's okay too. We're still going to go and they get all the products that we've got donated. Every single one that we went to last year, including the 3 that weren't even on the list, got product. So, but if you can support them, you want to support them, you feel inclined to support them, please use the QR code there and go ahead and do that. So, and all the toys will be delivered. We've got some amazing sponsors that we can talk about later on too. I also want to ask you guys to you search in your hearts. Nana and Papa's Nest in Virginia experienced a situation this past week where there was a fire at a property adjacent to their property. None of the birds were hurt. They didn't have to evacuate, but it kind of had a light bulb go off for them. And they've got an Amazon wish list. That's their PayPal. Those QR codes take you to their wish list and PayPal. They are looking for pillowcases. So it's not a huge ask, right? If you have pillowcases, you can get in contact with Nana and Papa's Nest and figure out how you can get them to them. They can give you the address. If not, you can purchase them on that wish list, or you can donate to their PayPal and they can purchase them themselves. They've got quite a few birds on property, and it was this kind of aha moment that it could be a big project to evacuate everybody. And we'll be talking, I'm hoping in a couple of weeks to do another session on evacuation, just because we haven't done one in a while. So, all right. I think that's it there's another one. There's a lost bird in Naples, Florida. This is Bobo, or red bird. This bird, if you scan that QR code, it will give you all the information. If you see this bird, it absolutely has a place to go. It's not a wild bird. So click the QR code. You'll get the information on if you happen to be in that area and see the bird. I know that the folks that have lost it would really like it back. So, all right, I think that's it, Nick, right? This week, as I get older, everyone looks younger. Police officers look younger, doctors look younger, nurses, professionals. And I go, oh, wow, they're so young to be doing that. But the young lady that I have on tonight is one of the most together young people I have met in a very long time. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to Bella Grelik. Hi, Bella. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Robin?
I'm good, thank you. I was just telling people you are perhaps one of the most together young people I know. And I met Bella down when I was in Florida, and I was like, oh, okay, so she's a young kid that likes birds. Um, I just You blew me away with your composure, your passion, and so wanted to have you on. So thank you for joining me tonight. Um,
Wow.
so
I'm not as together as you think.
Well, you put on a great front then, which
Thank
is a
you.
skill in itself. So, um, all right. So you're young. You're younger than most of the folks that are listening. Um, Not that we're old or anything, but you are young. So tell me how this happened. Do you want to share with people how old you are?
I'm 17.
Okay.
So
So are you officially
I'm
17
in a week.
in a week? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
17. um honestly, my age is a hard topic. People judge me because of how young I am. They don't take me seriously. So
Yep.
it's hard. How did this happen? Let's think. My parents did the mistake of what we tell people not to do, buying birds as gifts. My first two birds were, there was Bluebell, a Quaker parrot, and how original, Mango, the sun conure. And they were my first birds. They were gifts to me. I knew nothing about birds. I knew nothing, things that, I wouldn't think twice of now, like, air fresheners, Teflon, self cleaning your oven. I knew nothing about it. And then I had a really bad suicide attempt, and my dad got me a gift, and that gift was a pistachio. And pistachio was the meanest bird you could have ever met. I mean, just vicious. And I remember I brought him home on Mother's Day, and my mom was like, "Why did you bring home this evil bird?" And then after that, I tamed Pistachio down in about 2 months. He was my best friend, and I had him for almost 5 years. And then about 2 months after that, I got my Quaker parrot Marty, who was his mate. And then about a month later, I started volunteering at Parrot Outreach Society.
So it's been
So
a journey for you. You kind of fell into it.
it did.
I will say the picture that we used for the promo. How old were you in that picture? Do you know?
Carrie says it would have been about 8 years ago. So I don't remember that moment, but that was definitely, I call it the famous photo because it really shows. I mean, I don't know other 8-year-olds that were holding three macaw or two macaws and a cockatoo. And
No.
that's kind of how I fell back into it with Carrie.
Okay. So, all right. So what's your first bird memory? I usually ask people, and it seems like the usual answer is I had a budgie. But what's your first bird memory?
I have pictures at the beach with a severe macaw and a blue and gold macaw. And I actually know the guy that still has them to this day. I must have been 9 or 10. And that was my first bird memory that I remember holding those birds and taking a photo.
So at 9 or 10, you just thought this was cool, and I'm going to hold these birds,
hmm
and you
And
weren't
then I
afraid at all.
remember, no. And then I remember from them the obsession. And, my parents were like, okay, it was funny at first, but then it became like, okay, I want to do more.
Okay. So pistachio, you tell me a little bit more about that relationship,
Um,
if you can.
he was my best friend, and he was one of the best birds I think I've ever met. He came from my dad's friend, and they were great people, and I kept in contact with them until the day he died, and I still talk to them. They're probably watching this live. They were great people, but they had no bird knowledge. They didn't know what to do with him, and when I got him, I think he had one perch and maybe one toy, and he was something they looked at and talked to, but not something that was maybe super part of the family. And they're great people. I love them, but they didn't know anything about him, and they didn't know like he could blossom into this wonderful creature that changed my life. I mean, he did. He changed my life. It was something I could live for. I always say my life did not start until I got Pistachio.
You know, we
So,
we talk about a lot about how we and when I say we, I mean the community rescue birds, but a lot of times they rescue us too. And it sounds like that might be the case here. Um,
He was.
so
He taught me a lot.
yeah. So you mentioned, and I'm going to go off the list that I gave you, so don't panic on me. um, you mentioned in the beginning, you didn't know anything about how to take care of birds, or Teflon or self-cleaning ovens. How did how did you get that information? Because I think there are a lot of people out there who don't have that information, who may need it, or who want to get started. How did you get that information?
I am definitely more privileged than most people in the country. I have a lot of avian resources and aviculturists near me. I have
Mhm.
people I can call at 1 a.m. that would answer my question. I live with an aviculturist who can answer almost all of my questions that I could, just go downstairs to talk to. I am privileged in the fact that I have good mentors to answer your question. I
Okay.
think if you volunteer, it'll make it a lot easier because you'll be around people that have knowledge of birds and you'll learn those things as you go. If you just go get a bird and you don't surround yourself with bird people or even bird groups or bird forums, you're not going to intake the knowledge.
All right, so you're a young person. I'm going to ask this question. Information from the internet. What do you think?
I always say
People
this, what works for me might not work for you and what works for you might not work for me. There's so much controversial, wing clippings, cuddle buddies and tents, and I mean everybody's going to have a different opinion. So
Mhm.
I always go by like have the basics of like, hey, this is going to cause hormonal problems, but is it causing hormonal problems? This is dangerous. This is causing, problems. So I always say to try it, even if someone tells you maybe not to, and go at your own risk. I can't tell you what to do. First off, I'm not a vet. Second of all, I'm not in your home. I can tell you whatever I want to tell you. I can go on Google and give you whatever answer I want to give you. But it's up to you to do the work. I can teach you, but I can't teach the bird.
So I got to tell you, Bella, you haven't seen me present a lot ever, I don't think. And you are like my spirit child, because those are the things that I tell people. You don't live in those homes. You don't live with that bird. And the person that does is the person that knows them best. And I think that's amazing, advice for people. So, all right, volunteering. You suggested that people should surround themselves with bird people, or at a volunteer organization. What kind of volunteer work have you done in the avian community?
Let's think. I have done a little bit of everything. I cleaned the cages. I have picked up birds from basements, from garages. I have done disease testing and grooming. Um, I have, done retail. I've done toy stock. I guess I've done a little bit of everything. I feel
Okay.
like I've kind of looped around my volunteer place, the organization that I volunteer for at Parrot Outreach Society. I've done a little bit of it all.
So tell us a little bit about Parrot Outreach Society.
Parrot Outreach Society, I have a lot to say. They Parrot Outreach Society was the other pistachio. I was definitely going down the wrong path. I would not be where I am today without them. Um, I think Parrot Outreach Society is just there's so many mentors and I've never felt shunned. I feel like I think it's really easy to say, you don't know a lot, you're young, but Parrot Outreach never made me feel that way. They always, taught me and they're my family. I had an instance where Chance, my green wing macaw, got sick 2 years ago. And it was he had a double liver kidney infection. He was he was in and out for 4 weeks. He was in for a week and a half, I think. And it was over $5,000. I was 14 years old. I had $2,500 by the end. So all of the volunteers came together and they donated. In all, it was like $2,500. They're not just volunteers; they're my family. It,
Nice.
I've never felt out of place.
Okay. And then you've also volunteered at Bird Gardens of Naples, right?
I have a little bit. I've done a little bit of disease testing. I've trimmed a lot of her birds in the flights. And I think Carrie knows she can call me if there's any grooming or disease testing or needs me to rake a flight. Um,
Mhm.
so
I think
I just recently got in contact with her. I'm looking forward to working with her more.
nice. Okay. I think Nick has a picture of you in one of the flights. I'm not sure if we got that one or not. And so the you have mentors. You've got mentors at Parrot Outreach. You've got a mentor in Carrie Ellen at Bird Gardens of Naples. Um, how did you find how did you find your mentors?
Well, at Parrot Outreach Society, it started with our old president, Sue. She introduced me to the grooming room. And then it went to Stacy Hafeli, who taught me how to groom on my own. And then it went to Melanie, who I live with, who, she's just taught me a lot of her philosophies.
Okay. All right.
So I
Um,
just kind of as I went.
and I think that's, it's a great way that networking piece. Yeah, see there, that's in one of the flights, right?
Yeah, that was
With,
me trying to, as you can see, I was not very, I had never actually like chased birds in flights. And I don't know if you've heard the story, but me and Layla were doing the Amazons and they were like putting a spell on us and like flying at my head and she had to like hold them back with a stick. And I was like, no, don't eat me. It was funny.
yeah, and that's that's I gotta say that's an experience a lot of 16, almost 17-year-olds don't have. Going
Yeah.
into a flight of Amazons, going into a flight. I mean, do you know how many macaws are in that? Carrie's on. I know she can tell us. Um, I'm not sure how many
I mean, and
macaws
that
are
was
in.
a challenge itself because it was hard to keep track of who I had done. I was like, okay, let me do the militaries, let me do the hybrids, let me do the blue and golds. I mean,
Mhm.
it was all of it was just such a challenge.
And and that's something that, I'm not really good at, identifying in a flight, okay, that's so and so, that's so and so. And that's something if you're gonna be doing grooming that you have to be aware of, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there are 18 macaws in that flight. So not a lot of people. There are 18 macaws and 13 Amazons in the flight that you were in with the Amazon. So
It
that's a
felt like
lot
there was
of
100 Amazons.
and that's that big Amazon personality, but I think
No, they
that's
it wasn't just personality. They were like I hear them in my nightmares.
oh, you got a lot of Amazon people out there who are not gonna be happy with that statement, Bella. They,
They're scary. Okay, watch your back. That's my advice to them.
yeah, Carrie says, "God love the person who enters." It's so true. Um, so young people, young aviculturists, people who wanna get into this, what's the importance? You said to me, having experienced aviculturists help you. Was that one of the biggest things for you? I mean, you could have done this
This
on
goes
your own.
back to this goes back to me and Melanie were talking about this last night. The goal for hopefully you too, you'll probably agree with this statement is, not just to mentor someone, but to make them better than you. So that in the
Mhm,
future they learn how to grow. They learn that not everybody's right. I mean, just in the past 10 years, so much has changed. So much new, studies and research and, you know, everything's changing all the time.
mhm.
So I guess for me, it's, I always say, I wonder what birds I had the privilege of working with today that someone in 50 years won't have the privilege of working with,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I think, TJ is on listening, and TJ said, oh, well, first Adrian said, "Wait till you meet a 1,200 gram male Moluccan cockatoo on a mission." There you go. That's a
I
challenge
had my
accepted.
butt bit by a Moluccan a couple days ago.
Oh, and then TJ, who is an amazing aviculturist, says, mentors in aviculture have made my career so grateful for them. And I think that's something that, you know, Bella, I hope that you are an inspiration for some of the older folks. Sam says, very proud of you, honey. So
My
there's
dad.
the older folks who we do want to make you better than us, um, and it's just, but I hope that, those of us who are a little bit more mature in age, see someone like Bella and reach out to her and give her that help. I've always felt that you can look stuff up in a textbook, you can look it up now, you can look it up online, but really it's about listening to the stories and listening to people who have experience.
I
Um,
used to always be told by Sue to sit back and watch until it's your time. And I want to say something to the older aviculture community. I know that's a tough term, but people that are 40 years older than me, that have 40 more years of experience than me. Don't shun us younger people. Include us in your events, include us in your rescue, teach us, make us the liability. Because if you don't, you're not going to have advocates in the future. Eventually there will be a time where we are you, we'll be your generation. And you want to hope that we find the next generation and we mentor them the way you mentored us.
mhm. Uh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. That is what we need. We need you guys. And I think it's really important. Yeah, Adrian says we certainly need more people like Bella in aviculture. And it's true. Aviculture is a very specific hobby. It's a very specific way of life. And I think, we are all getting older and we need people like you, and your friends, peers who can continue the work that has been done, because a lot of great work has been done. It's just a matter of keep moving it forward. Um, so the your experience in rescue, you and I talked a little bit, before, about the other day, about dealing with difficult situations, not necessarily in the rescue, but when you are going out doing grooming. And you said something to me about small steps. Do you remember that conversation we had?
I do. So this is something that as a groomer, um, I've always said. So when I go to people's houses, I'm in Florida. Florida law states, animals are property and they need food, water, and shelter. And the difference between my fellow peers at the rescue that aren't going into people's homes is when we're taking a bird out of a really bad situation, we know they're going on to a better place. They're going to the rescue. They're going to be vetted, disease tested, have 4 or 5 purchased toys, proper size cage. With me, I'm going into people's homes knowing these birds are going to live like that for the next 10, 20, 40 years. There's only
Mhm.
so much I can say. And, telling someone what they can do better versus what they're doing wrong is going to get me a lot farther. If the bird has 1 perch in its cage and I get them to have 2 perches by the end of the night, that's a deal for me. Because realistically, who wants to go? First off, I'm 16. I'm telling you, you're doing this, this, and this wrong. You need to spend $900, new toys, new purchase. Who's going to do that? No one. No
Mhm.
one's going to do it. I've met a handful of people that will. The rest, it's like, okay, don't come back. I'm going to take my bird, to the flea market and get it trimmed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck off.
And I think that's amazing advice for people, is that, you know, taking it step by step. If you encounter a situation that isn't optimum, that isn't perfect, or that is, substandard, um, taking it small steps instead of, well, you've got to change everything. This is all wrong. It doesn't matter if you're your age, Bella, or my age. Nobody wants to hear that everything that they're doing is wrong.
Well,
And
and
go ahead.
I always have in the back of my mind that not everyone has my experience, my thoughts, my knowledge. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I have to be careful with the terms I use. Not everybody knows what barbering is or prolapsing. you have to be careful with how you're wording things to people, because if I go give them all this information, they're not going to learn anything from it when I'm throwing hundreds and hundreds of things they don't understand. You need to put your bird on Harrison's and get this specific perch and this specific toy. Nobody's going to remember all of that. You have to take it slow. It has to be a journey that you walk. For me, my clients, I go along it with them. I offer them every bit of help that I can. You can't afford a perch, I'll give you a perch. You can't afford a toy, I'll give you a toy. You can't afford a better cage, come talk to Parrot Outreach Society. We might have something in the back that's not perfect, but we could give to you. I'm lucky that I have those resources as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, that brings up another good point is the resources, the networking that happens. I mean, some people's birds may, they need that help. And if it wasn't for you coming out and offering that help, things might not change or they might get worse. And I think instead of judging, which you're not doing, you're trying to help. And I've had people say to me, "Oh, well, this isn't a good situation. You really can't go to that rescue or, that facility." And to me, if I can make one little change by going there, it may not be perfect and it may never be perfect, but those little changes are what really help.
They do. And another thing is like a lot of people don't even know there is bird rescues. Myself probably brought in 40 or 50 birds into the rescue through my business, because a lot of times those birds that are living in, what I would call, squalor or, not to my standards, people don't, it's my mom's bird. I don't know what to do with it. I can't get it out of the cage. Most of the birds that I go to, 8 out of 10, people can't take them out of the cage. So,
Right.
giving
Right.
them the option, this is a rescue, this is Parrot Outreach, this is Bird Gardens of Naples, this is someone I know that's looking for an African gray. People don't know they even have that option. So just by me going over there to say that, maybe they don't want to go spend money and buy the bird new stuff. Maybe they just want to relinquish it. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and it's offering those options for people that are so important. Um, you mentioned, when a bird's going to parrot outreach or a rescue, excuse me, that it's going to have disease testing. And so, what's the importance of that? So, you have to deal with this as someone who's going into people's homes, disease testing and quarantine. How do you what's the importance of that for you, and how do you handle that?
so for me, the main importance will always be the birds in my home and always be the possibility of an outbreak. If I didn't sanitize my tools, I can think of 3 houses that I know had a disease. Whose bird would I have passed that to if I wasn't vigilant, if I didn't sanitize my tools? So it's not just about me or my birds, it's also about my clients' birds, who I care about. I Like I said, a lot of people don't know about the different diseases. A lot of people don't know what steps to take next. A lot of people don't know, with, beak and feather disease, that bird could just be a carrier. They don't have to look sick. You bring another bird home and your next bird is dead a month later. They don't understand that a bird can look okay. Quarantining is not enough. You have to disease test. Times have changed. We have the ability. It's $55 to, test for Pacheco's, to test polyoma, chlamydia, PBFD. It's not expensive anymore. It's something that can be done by a groomer, or by your rescue. I know my rescue usually doesn't even charge to disease test. We just charge you the lab fee. So
Mhm.
I think it's
So,
important.
so by disease testing, if I have a bird at my home, you come in to do grooming. How do you do the disease testing?
So I cut the quick a little short, and then I use a testing card to swab the blood, and then I wet a Q-tip and I swab their poop. And then I would mail, like I use animal genetics, and then I mail that off for my client, and then I send them the results a week later.
Okay. All right. So, I mean,
So I mean, it,
simple.
it literally takes 5 minutes.
Right, right. It's not, you're handling that bird anyway for grooming. Why not add that next step? I think that's important. So in quarantine, you mentioned quarantine. Well, let's go back one more. Sanitizing your tools. How do you do that?
So I usually use like rubbing alcohol. First off, I'll wipe my tools. If most of, I mean, there's a few people watching. I've been to their house. I'll wipe them when I get there. I mean, whatever, because my trim bag, I should have sent you a picture. It is just full of I have a cauterizer, Dremels. So I usually pull out, let's say, 5 things. I sanitize those 5 things. I cut your bird's nails, and then I sanitize them again before I put them back. And I used to use my own towels when I first started, and now I don't because I can't sanitize a towel. So now I make, whoever's house I'm at give me their towel, as you can see in this photo. So I usually just do rubbing alcohol.
Okay.
And then if
But
I
I
go
think
to a
that's
client's house that I think has something, I use more than rubbing alcohol. It starts with an H. I can't remember it off the top of my head. It's like hydroxy something, and it's a little bit stronger than just rubbing alcohol.
okay. And I think, that's a good point is you do it before, you do it after, because there's, you don't know, you can't take those chances. And you mentioned too, a bird can look great and, not be showing any signs, but be a carrier, or a bird can look great and then, the next day have it, start showing
And
symptoms.
and that goes back to that birds are animals of prey. They don't show that they're sick until they physically can't. So by you telling me, "Oh, I just got this bird a week ago, he's fine." That means nothing to me. I'm not going to board your bird. I'm not going to tell you to board it at Parrot Outreach. That means nothing if you think your bird looks fine to me. I mean, I look fine. You'd never know I have a fainting disorder. So what would quarantining me do? You wouldn't know.
Right,
So
right. Chlorhexidine, Eve says, is that so?
yes,
Eve,
chlorhexidine.
Eve, you were right. There's an H in the middle. Thank you, Eve. Appreciate it. Uh, let's talk about mentors. It's,
This
um,
is Eve. This
but
is the president of Eve Butler is the president of Parrot Outreach Society.
thank you for the work you do, Eve. We appreciate it. So, all right, we haven't talked about Bella's paws and claws. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So it was never supposed to be a business. It was supposed to be I posted on Facebook is my best friend, by the way. I have to stop. This is Corbin. This is one of my favorite birds in the whole world that I'm gonna go and steal one day. This is Stacy's eclectus. He's the best. It was never supposed to be a business. I had posted on Facebook groups. Facebook has been the best networking app I have ever used. Nothing tops it for me. So I would post in the local groups, I cut bird nails for $10. And then as I went from birds, it turned into, well, if I can towel a bird, I can towel a small aggressive dog, a small aggressive cat. I did aggressive dogs and cats before I did the simple ones like Bug here. And then it was like hedgehogs and turtles, and I've done prairie dogs. And it turned into this like, I actually got a license. I actually got liability forms. It turned into a whole business. It was never supposed to be like, I pay my car from it. I pay for my birds from it. It was never supposed to be that. So I'm
Yeah.
privileged enough that I don't know how I got to where I am, but it happened.
It's great. I mean, and that's the best kind of story, it just kind of organically grew into a business and I love it. Oh, by the way, that's not Eve, it's Mel. Her phone died, so she's
Mel's phone
on
died.
Eve's.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds like
Um,
her. Mel is the vice president of Parrot Outreach Society.
there we go. We got everybody on. It's a good thing. And we've got Ziggy's on too. I noticed Laura made a comment before. So, all right. People who want to get their birds groomed, how do they what do you suggest they do? I mean, so they need to have their bird groomed. How can they get their birds ready for that? What's the best thing for them to do?
For me, the best thing to do is make sure that your groomer is reputable. Make sure it's not someone that you found on Craigslist that has no reviews, no references. Make sure they have blood stopper. Make sure they if they're doing your bird's beak, they have a bar of soap, because for me, the only thing that works to stop a beak bleeding is a bar of soap. And some of us will go farther, like, and have cauterizers and silver nitrate, things like that. But not everybody does. Make sure your groomer is reputable. Make sure your groomer knows what they're doing. I had no idea what blood tears were, or blood feathers, or, seizures or strokes when I first started. I'm very educated on that now, and I would know what to do if they happened, because they have. So make sure your groomer knows what they're doing.
So those things come up a lot. I mean, a bird having a seizure while being groomed or is a distinct possibility, right?
I've had it happen to me twice.
Mhm. And
So, I
and
mean,
so you mentioned that you're licensed. Are you a
I
license
have a
so as
business
a
license. I'm not licensed in anything with aviculture.
okay.
I've yet
Um,
to find any certification for
yeah,
grooming with parrots.
okay.
So if anybody knows
So
of any, please message me.
what's the best way to find out if your groomer is reputable? I mean,
Ask them for
how do you
references.
okay. Yeah. I mean,
Ask
and I
ask
think
them what their setup looks like. Does it look
yeah.
better or worse than yours? Ask them
Mhm.
some, simple questions. Ask them,
Yeah.
how do you towel a bird? How do you restrain it?
Okay. And so all right, so let's talk about that for a minute. We got to go back for a second. Carrie said most have never seen a blood tear. Do you want to explain that to people?
So, a blood tear is said to have been caused by either high blood pressure or like a sinus infection, but there's no actual studies that prove that's what happens. It's mostly
Okay.
seen in African greys. I've seen it twice in African greys, but there's really not a
Mhm.
lot of research on it. And I can't tell you exactly what it's caused by because there's no research on it. It literally
Okay.
looks the first one that I ever did was a Congo African gray, and literally his eye went bloodshot. And it's a funny story because Melanie will tell you that when it happened, I said I was never going to trim another bird again. And I cried and I cried and I didn't want to. I get the feeling to this moment how I thought I killed this bird. And Melanie forced me in the trim room and made me trim. So um, the bird, his name was Joey. Actually, he lived. So a blood tear, it just looks like you blew a blood vessel in their eye, and their eye is bloodshot, or sometimes not fully. The second one that I got, it was only halfway.
Okay. So, yeah, because I mean, a lot of people don't even know what that is. So, okay, what should the answer be if I say to you, Bella, how do you towel a bird? What should if I ask the groomer, what should the answer be?
So for me, I would say I want to make sure the bird's wings don't get caught. I want to make sure, I'm not going to break your bird's wing. And I'm also properly making sure that I'm not cutting off an oxygen supply to your bird or twisting its neck so much to break it. I guess that's
Mhm.
how I would answer it. I also have
Okay.
videos. I would just refer someone to one of the videos I have posted of how I've groomed and toweled birds before. Like I try to
Okay.
post that stuff on my business page to show this is how it's done.
Mhm.
And this is
I mean,
Legend,
this
a Buffon's macaw that was not very happy after his trim. He tried to bite me after this.
but I mean, he's pretty chill right there.
He is. So I groom a little bit differently. A lot of people would tell you I groom in a very unsafe way, but as of now, I've had no issues with it. I learned from Stacy. She does it a little
Mhm.
differently. She puts her knees up, but I'm a little bit more heavyweight, so I can do it with my legs straight out. And I'm able to actually like feel every bone in the bird's body. I don't
Mhm.
recommend it to people, but I can feel where their wings are, where their head is, where their tail is. This is me
Mhm.
grooming a kayik with Sabrina's ring neck on me. I don't know how to. I just for me it's we added up the numbers. I did in the past 4 years. I have groomed about 2,500 animals, so it wasn't easy to learn how to do it. But it just over time. I used to have someone holding for me, and then I learned I could do it myself and save money. I don't have
Mhm.
to pay someone. So
There you go. So, okay, what basic husbandry things, what do you need what do people need to know? What do they get should they be looking for? What are the most important if you could give people, like, a short list of the most important things they need to do, and then how that impacts you as a groomer, what would that be?
So for me as a groomer, my number one pet peeve is dowels. The problem is they're cheap. Manufacturers send them off with the cage, and if you don't know any better, you just put those two dowels that come with the cage, and you think that's enough. They cause atrophy, they cause arthritis, they cause bumblefoot. I see so many more problems with birds that have dowels rather than a normal 4 different types of perches. For me, dowels. If you don't want to take your dowels out, if you can't afford to change your dowels out, go on Amazon or go to the dollar store, look for something called medical wrap or vet wrap, and you can wrap them and it makes them a little bit less harsh on your parrot's feet. And then Nick is showing us pictures of beaks, and this for me is very important because this is my 3 major beak problems that I see. So this is Morgan. Morgan has no bottom beak, and he's missing 2 toes on his right side, and he has 1 foot. He was attacked by an umbrella cockatoo about 10 years ago, and this is a trauma beak. So his beak was completely normal until he was attacked. And it actually grows this far in about 4 weeks. I do them every 4 weeks, and that hyperkeratosis just really kills him. It took me a while to get it back to that length to recede the quick. And then I don't know which one he's going to show next, but
What have we
I
got
don't know.
next, Nick? There we go.
And then this is, I believe, Pickles. This is just hyperkeratosis from just being on a seeded diet. He just ate seed his whole 20 years, and they're having a difficult time switching him over. We've tried a few different brands. This grows back about every 8 weeks to this length. And then this is Ocean, and this is actually a birth defect. So he was born with that split beak, and then it grows out, and I do him about every 3 months.
So I
And this
know
is
that
something like
go
it's
ahead.
really dangerous to trim beaks. I always tell people, don't trim your own bird's beaks if you don't know what you're doing. You're going to hit their quick, and you're not going to be able to stop it. I've hit 3 birds' quicks. It's really hard to get them to stop.
Mhm. So on a split beak like this, a scissor beak, I know, well, you're getting job offers, by the way. Jody, who owns Kiko's Parrots out in Washington State, if you'd like to go to the West Coast, she can use you in Washington. Just saying. So you've got options. Don't tell Mel though, okay? But
I
or
have to trim
Carrie.
her birds. Okay? I have to go trim Mel's birds.
There we go.
She
All
asked me
right.
a month ago.
So I've talked to Jody before about, scissor beak and how do you handle something like, I mean, okay, the first time you came upon a bird like that, how do you handle that? Because that's a different
So
situation.
so with the scissor, this is on top of the split with that scissor. It makes them really hard to eat for them to eat. So with this one, I don't like taking clippers to beaks because they can snap at the base. And so Eve had Lucky taken to a vet, and they snapped half of his bottom beak by accident. They're lucky, there was no blood involved, but it can happen where there is. So with him, I usually cut that, and then I Dremel it down, which is difficult because I have to really lodge my finger in there. And that's another thing. I don't avoid being bit. I get bit on a very regular basis being a groomer. There is no way around it. So with
Mhm.
him, I kind of just stick my finger, I push it all the way to the right as far as I can, and I really Dremel it. And then if Dremeling doesn't work, I take a file after I
So you're also, Michelle is volunteering you to go on the Rockstar tour with Carrie and I, just so you know. Uh, so, and that way you could get to meet Jody when we end at Jody's place. So, all right, so we've got beak issues. You talked a little bit about bumblefoot. What do you do when you see, what do you suggest people do when you see bumblefoot? What's your suggestion at that point?
So it depends. I've seen really severe cases. Like we had a military macaw that was that I took out of the home, and then it became Mel's bird. It came into the rescue for a little bit. Her bumblefoot was so severe. I should have added a photo. I've never seen anything like it. It stuck out outside of her foot. And then you just have the little sores. It is reversible when it starts getting to that point. So if I notice it, it's actually one of the only things I'll really poke at someone for. I try to have that compassion and not say you're doing this and this wrong. But when I see bumblefoot, I'll say, okay, do you have coconut oil? Does your bird let you rub coconut oil on their feet? Can you put coconut oil on, can you buy a stainless steel perch on Amazon and put coconut oil on it every day to get that coconut oil on their feet, to moisturize it? And then usually with bumblefoot, it's just not proper perching, or,
Right.
not proper diameter, or, types. So usually I'll just, okay, let's vet wrap your perches. I usually just use my own vet wrap. And then that also comes with You have to change that vet wrap out every 2 or 3 months because it starts to mold underneath. So I'll usually just recommend vet wrapping. I've also, like I said, I do the coconut oil, and I feel that helps.
Mhm. You know, I we when we were at Ziggy's, we were talking Melanie was talking about bumblefoot and, pododermatitis and how sometimes it just looks like a shiny spot, and if you rub vitamin E on it, you can see it better. So yeah, just a little tip from Melanie, from Hagen. So different Melanie from Hagen. So, okay. What's your funniest bird experience?
So this goes back to when I just had Pistachio and Marty, his mate. I had bought a 20-pound bag of almonds off Amazon, almonds in the shell, and they come in this clear bag. Most of you know what I'm talking about. Well, I left it on the floor, and at that time, when I just had Pistachio, I could kind of just leave him out because he stayed on his cage most of the time. Well, he saw that bag of almonds that I left on the floor, and he ripped into it. And like a chipmunk, he hid them. Like he hid like 20 of them around my room. And I swear, for like a month, a month later, he would like with determination walk like behind my dresser to the back leg and pull one out. Like he knew exactly where he hid them. I mean, like I
So
don't know
yeah.
how he remembered, but he remembered.
It's, and I think that's important is that they will help themselves, when given the opportunity. I remember years ago when I first started selling toys, I went into the store and I had one of our nut rings with me, and I put it up on the counter, and I was so proud of our products, blah blah blah. And I'm talking to the owner and selling my little heart out, and I look back, and there's a blue and gold macaw, and my Brazil ring is gone. Like it's the shells are still there, but yeah, all the nuts were gone. I was like, oh, that's not good. So yeah,
They helped
um,
themselves.
at least Pistachio like rationed them out. He didn't just eat them all at once.
I think he ate like a good 10 and then hit another 20. So
There you
but
go.
he was so smart. That just goes back to he was one of the smartest birds I'd ever met.
Yeah.
I mean,
Laurie
when I
says,
was upset, this bird would like climb and come and cheer me up.
oh yeah. So Laurie says that's foraging at its best. There we go. You didn't even have to do anything, and he foraged. So I know the answer to this. What's your favorite bird to work with?
If it's not obvious enough, and if it's on my neck too, and I have a tattoo of one, the mustache parakeet will always be my favorite bird to work with. And I
And
have
it, you
another
know, I
funny story.
then by all means,
I don't know if you ever seen a bird ant do anting?
explain
I
what
I
that
had
is.
never
Just
seen it. So anting is where like in the wild they'll to get the parasite not paras I want to say it's parasites to get like the
mm,
bugs out of them, they'll put like ants under their wing to eat them. So when I believe that's correct. When I first
mm.
went and saw a bird anting, they took a bead and they put it under their wing and they were like, I was like, what is that hormonal? And then Stacy was like, no, it's called anting. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know birds did that.
So, yeah, it's kind of cool for you to say that that's your favorite bird because most people expect, the big birds, the cockatoos and the macaws, and for someone to say that a parakeet, and we forget too that they're mustache parakeets, even though they're bigger. For you to say that, I love that's your favorite bird.
Well,
So,
and I have a little bit of everything. I have macaws. I had I have one Pioneers. I have Quake. I've had a little bit of everything, and I've worked with a little bit of everything. And they just I think because my first bird was one, and I like
mhm,
their demeanor. As you can tell, we've sat here this whole time, and they've made one noise. They're
yeah.
phenomenal talkers. They're calm. They're smart. They're not super active. They're very content with life. And all of
Mhm.
them that I've met tend to have that same unlike where I feel like macaws can differentiate, I feel like the mustaches have a very similar personality.
Cool. Very cool. So for anybody that wants to get into birds, what do they need to think about, um, when they're considering a career in any form of aviculture? So what do people need to think about?
I think The first thing is finding somewhere that can open that door for you. And I know that's hard because not, there's states that don't have rescues. There's states that don't have anything. Even like my first experience really working with birds before Parrot Outreach and before Pistachio and Marty, when I already had that, liking, was hand feeding at a pet store, like helping them hand feed and just spending time there. I mean, even though I didn't learn the extent of what I've learned at Parrot Outreach in my business, I learned something and it kind of opened that door to that opportunity. So find your
Mhm.
place. And that goes back to don't shun the youth, teach them, make them your liability, you know?
Yeah. I think that's important. I think all those of us who have been in it for a while, we really need to think about that. We need to find someone who's going to be the next generation, and you're looking at her. You're looking at the next generation of aviculture. Um, so find your place. I think that's really important for young people to hear is find your place. And Bella, if feeling comfortable somewhere, I feel like that's really important.
It is. There's so many different avenues in aviculture. There's the rescue. If I wanted to quit the rescue tomorrow and just do grooming, there's breeding. Like there's so many different areas you can work with. And I think, you know, TJ just said I started with cleaning chicken brooders at a feed store when I was 12. It's
Yeah.
you have to start somewhere and there's way more to start with than people think. You can work at a pet store and clean cages.
Mhm.
So,
Jody says she loves you. It's amazing. We've got, let's see, the comments are wonderful. Oh, Nick wants to know if you do big dogs like Rottweilers.
I do. So, this is
So
a
tell us
picture
about
of I can't remember her name. I think it's Maya. She actually, if you look closely, she tore her dew claw off because of how long her nails were. And this was an older lady who could not afford to get her dog's nails done. And she reached out and she was like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, you called the right person because I'll come right out. I'll never say no. If you ask for help, you should never be told no. Fellow groomers out there, if it's about the money for you, you're in the wrong business. We should all be helping everybody." Um, I did a mastiff for years that passed away, and my dad's watching. It took 6 of us to do. We used gabapentin and trazodone. We muzzled, I toweled their heads. I would have my dad sitting on them or me. It takes like 6 people to do. So I do large aggressive dogs.
yeah. So Nick's Rottweilers aren't aggressive, but they're big. So we need to now bring you to California to do that. So yeah. And Laura says you can always learn something, sometimes what to do, sometimes what not to do. And I think
That is true.
that's
I have seen people do things that I don't agree with, and I've learned, okay, I'm not gonna do that in the future. That was a mistake. For years, feeding seed was okay, and now it's not. Somewhere along the line, someone didn't listen to the person before them. So we've
right.
all been doing it subconsciously. You've been doing it subconsciously your whole life where you stopped listening to the person, older than you.
Yeah, it's very true. Um, all right. Last words of wisdom for younger people.
Um, you know, we are the next generation. And you are important. If you are advocating for the birds, you matter. Whether you think it right now or not, whether you have people that aren't on your side or are, you do matter. And there is a few of us out there. We are far and few in between, but you might not fit in at school. You might not be the most normal person, but if birds are your thing, they're your thing. There's so many aspects in life that, that's their thing. If you're a hairstylist, that's your thing. If you're a doctor, that's your thing. Make this your thing. You can make a career out of it. I was always told as a kid, if you're not a breeder or a vet, you can't make a career in aviculture. And I kind of did. I mean, so
No, not you. Not you kind of did. You did. You have. You are. Jen says, I love Bella. She's so knowledgeable and has helped me get more comfortable handling different birds. So, I
this
mean,
is our
and we've got
volunteer coordinator.
there. So that's a huge kudo. Wise beyond your years, rocking it. That's Laura from Ziggy's. Um, it's really, I love what you've brought tonight. And I want to thank you. I know you're much more comfortable with the birds than you are with things like this. And so I really do appreciate you being on. And I want to just, if I can encourage you to just keep doing what you're doing. And I know you've got amazing mentors, but thank you. Thank you for being, you're there for us because it makes, I know I can tell you, and I'm going to speak on behalf of a lot of people who are watching, it makes our souls more comfortable to know that there are people like you out there. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed this. I was very, this was not my thing, but the birds, they were helping.
There you go. There you go. And that's what it's all about. So thank you again. I just want to remind everybody the Rockstar Tour is in full swing. We've got donations for the different rescues. You can scan either one of those QR codes. One is for donations to the tour, and one is for donations for the rescue. And we really want to thank all of our sponsors. It's we've got a lot of different sponsors, but for this week we're spotlighting Harrison's Bird Foods. Harrison's has given us a generous grant of $1,500 towards our transportation and gas and things like that, and they're also donating food for all of the rescues that we're visiting. So we want to thank Harrison's Bird Foods and all of our sponsors. I know Jody from Kiko's Parrots was on here. Kiko's is a sponsor as well. And we've got, I know I'm missing somebody on here. I'm not sure, but they'll let me know. So again, thank you guys. And next week, this is something that Bella and I touched on a little bit when we're talking about disease management and quarantine and things like that. Next week, I'm going to have Shannon Kramer from Birds and Beaks Rescue in Michigan, and we're going to be talking about transparency and disease management. For any of you who are on Facebook who follow Sharon from Birds and Beaks, not Shannon, Shannon, not Sharon, sorry. She's been going through a real difficult situation this week, and she's been very transparent about the whole thing. So everybody take care. Have a wonderful week. Thank you again, Bella. And I will see everyone next week on Flock Talk. Take care. Bye-bye.